you encounter so many students from so many different levels of playing. Some of them have very little experience, some of them have a lot. So the first time you look at a saxophonist and you listen to them and watch them, what is it that you're looking for in their position, in their setup, in the way that they take a breath and they're playing? What are the things that you think are fundamental to playing the saxophone beautifully?
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
What kind of equipment they're using? That is reeds and mouthpieces. Their embouchure. Are they staying out of their own way when they play, or are they in their own way when they play? Do they understand the concept of the musical line? Is their practicing, is their playing in pursuit of the musical line? Has anyone ever presented this concept to them? Are they aware of this concept when listening to other musicians, not just saxophone players? The musical line is a big thing. And then how we pursue the musical line by physically staying out of our own way with embouchure, breathing, toning, and equipment, all of those things.
And when you, I mean, I know you do a lot of adjudication at TSSEC and all those kinds of things. You hear a lot of kids play. Are there, sort of prominent issues that you see come up a lot that concern their fundamental way of approaching the instrument, that you think, boy, if there were a couple things that I wish I could convey to just band directors, other teachers in general, these are like the big issues that I see kids really don't have in place?
Well, have the students ever thought about evenness of tone quality from the bottom to the top of the instrument? Especially on the saxophone, the following registers, middle B, middle C sharp without the octave key, are more often than not very thin and not even with the rest of the instrument. The high notes from high C sharp up to high F, palm keys, are very thin and not even with the rest of the instrument. So that's one issue. Issue number two, does the player understand the concept of, does the player have a rich sound to begin with, and does he or she understand the concept of vibrato? And if so, is the vibrato a part of the sound, or is it without the sound? And does the vibrato fit the style of music they are playing? Number three, and this comes up constantly. If the student is playing a transcription, but usually a Baroque transcription, do they know what that piece of music was written for originally, when it was written, and have they heard a performance of the original instrument playing that piece? The answer is 99% of the time, no, they have not. Are they aware that the saxophone was invented in about 1842, and they're playing a piece that was written in 1630? And what is the style of that piece? Have they listened to any other music from that period? Usually no one has pointed out these thoughts to the students. And often they're very, very talented, and I can tell immediately they have a lot of talent, a lot of enthusiasm for music and for the saxophone, but have no knowledge of the style of the music. Those are big issues with younger players.
When you look at people's facial structure and embouchure and how you want them to be set up, can you just run down your basic embouchure?
There are basically two schools of saxophone playing in the world that I have observed these decades I've been at it. One school of playing says the saxophone is a big conical instrument. Conical, thus the body starts small at the top and flares as it goes down. Whether it's curved or straight, it's like a cone. Where the clarinet is a cylinder, it's a cylindrical instrument until the bell, you take that off but play all but the bottom few notes. So one school of playing, not the one I now use, says the saxophone is hard to play down low, hard to play soft down low because it's a big conical instrument. So we're going to put on a reed that's soft enough to play the low notes easily. Okay, that's one way to go, and that's how I used to play till I was 23 years old. The problem with that school of playing, in my opinion, is that when you get to low F, low B flat up to F is okay. When you get to F and on up, it gets very thin, the sound. And so it's very bright because the reed's very soft. So this school of playing says, well, yes, F and above, it gets bright, so we're going to make it darker by, in some way, adding tension at the embouchure. Now, there are various ways to add tension at the embouchure, and since I went through all those 10 ways of playing over the years, I might be able to. There's this way, and this way. You can have a rubber band around the mouthpiece. There's this way here. We put this back and out of the way and get very tight here. That's close. And there's even one of these. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. The reed vibrates against the mouthpiece like this.
Right.
And like this. What this tension in the embouchure does is it stops this part of the vibration completely. So now the reed's only going this way. When you stop this part of the vibration, you cut out the high overtones. So if the sound is too bright, that means there are too many high overtones in it. Well, doing something here, you can cut it, you can make it darker. And that's what it does. However, also when you get to the high notes around the palm keys, it gets very thin. So if you're very tight, it's not as loud as I'm going to play up there because it's very tight. And it's also when you tighten this, there are two sets of muscles here and here. And so this set of muscles then comes down here and causes the area of the throat to be tightened. So then now you're working against yourself with this tension. You can play, you can do well, but it's harder. You're working against yourself. You're in your own way as opposed to being out of your own way. Now, so that's one school of embouchure. It says it's hard to play down low. You put on a reed that's soft enough to play the low notes, and then you kind of deal with the rest of it to make it darker. Okay, that's one way to go. This school of playing says we put on a reed that has heart, that has a certain thickness to it, that comes up way up here in the reed, in this kind of shape. Not in the middle, but way up here. Okay, and that gives us a richer sound in the instrument. Then the low notes are a little harder to play. How do we deal with that? We take a reed knife and lengthen the reed. We work on another part of the reed with a reed knife, but we leave that heart there, number one. And number two, we actually cover the reed by moving the mouthpiece, and we play like this. The difference in sound when I don't move the mouthpiece is, or if I move it, it adds low overtones to the low notes.
Right, sure.
So we deal with it in a different way. And this embouchure that we use is very relaxed with no tension. The lower lip at the sides is out of the way of the reed. And kind of, you barely set the corners. Corners are set but not taut. And so it's just nothing. I mean, when it's right, it's so easy to play and so free, and there's no tension. And my biggest challenge is graduate students that come and I see they have talent and I want them here, but they have tension. They're so tense when they play, and it's in their way. I can see this. And so they usually enjoy what we do first, and that's allowing themselves to get out of their own way when they play.
And so that this whole concept, Harvey, of getting out of your way, or staying out of your way when you're playing, sounds to me like it's really based on fundamentally a relaxed set of muscles in your embouchure, but also doing things efficiently, that you're not moving anything any more than you need to move it, or tightening anything more than it needs to be tightened to create the effect that you're going to create. Is that a fair?
That's very fair. Very correct.
You know, Harvey, when I see a lot of kids play, I know that the relationship of the saxophone and the mouthpiece to their body and how they're supporting the instrument, I see all different things. So what do you recommend?
The first thing I look for, and this goes back to your original question, which I should have talked about, is the position of their head. The position of your head. bring the saxophone to you, don't go to it.
Yeah.
We have the following adjustments on the saxophone. The neck moves this way.
Yeah.
Right? The mouthpiece turns.
Uh-huh.
The neck strap moves.
Okay.
So the head, the first thing I do if I'm teaching a young student
Right.
is to I take the instrument away from them and have them talk to me. Just talk to me. I usually ask them if they have any brothers or sisters. You know, just to get away. And I watch the position of their head when they're talking to me. Then I put the saxophone and I kind of do this, and so their head doesn't. So now bring the saxophone to you, and invariably, the saxophone is down here, and they're doing this.
Right. Sure.
Now, so then we raise the neck strap, you know, and you rest it against your body one way or another. You can hold it over here, or hold it over here, but you don't want to end up wearing these things like I have to wear because I was too macho during my career. I used to play soprano saxophone on tour, you know, like for 3 weeks at a time with my harder guitar, saxophone guitar by myself with no neck strap. Now I have a brace and the whole thing. But eventually I got overuse syndrome in these joints.
Just from the weight of the instrument.
The weight, yeah. And plus, when you cause tension here, then it's harder to move your fingers, so you push out. So you rest it against your body, however you want it, on either here or here.
Right.
Doesn't matter. But then you adjust everything to bring it to where your head is when you're talking to somebody. When the trouble is, most of the young players at some very advanced players lower their head to the saxophone. What's wrong with that? For every action, there's an opposite but equal reaction. Well, the action is these muscles back here extend, these contract. What's this again? The area of the throat. The area of the throat is now tight. You're once again in your way. So I usually have the kids do this, keep this arm stationary, and put a hand here and push down. You can feel when you push down this tightening. So that's the first thing we talk about. You know, and then I ask the students to go home and just look in the mirror and talk to themselves to see where their head is.
Yeah.
And then just I just go in your bathroom mirror at home, you know, and then bam, like that. And it takes some time. And I ask them also to get a little mirror they can put on their stand so they can try to check this out. It just takes some time.
Sure.
Because a lot of young students do this for 4 or 5 years. They don't realize what they're doing. Right. Again, they're in their own way. And it's a stack of dominoes. If the reed doesn't have heart, then they also lower their head because it reduces the tension down here, and then the reed plays better. But in the meantime, you have tension here. So you're getting into a whole bunch of problems.
Sure.
Once again, you're in your own way. So bring the saxophone to you, don't go to it. Let it rest against your body. And I do spend a lot of time with that concept. That's maybe the first thing we do. And it usually improves the playing of any player by 40%.
Just that.
Just that, immediately, just right now. And usually the students go, wow, you know, listen to me. Listen to you because you're out of your own way.
Could you talk a little bit about the placement of the tongue in relationship to the mouthpiece?
Okay, there's the French syllable U, and if you say U and then make E with your tongue, you'll have it. U.
Yeah.
That's. I have to kind of show you. I mean, there are these steps where we vocalize first, just learning to. We look in the mirror together, the students, and we sing this. It's just moving air and keeping this very relaxed.
Very loose, yeah.
And then we gradually glide the tongue over the teeth as if the tongue is the teeth here are the railroad tracks and the tongue is a train. And it just sits right on the tracks but even overlaps some. And it's still very nice. And then barely touching the upper molars with the sides of the tongue. Gives us forward coning.
Yeah, I see.
And then even when you get forward coning, the tip can be up, middle, or down, but you want middle. Because what's going to happen is, and then you have to, again, train a muscle right at the tip of the tongue. Here, just the very tip of the tongue moves up and down, just ever so little. So here's the motion. Boy, is it easy.
Yeah.
I mean, the tongue just bounces on the air.
We haven't talked about vibrato, which is such a fundamental part of the saxophone sound.
Yeah.
So could you talk about that a little bit about not only as you incorporate vibrato into your playing, what physically is going on, but also talk about when we're taking a young student and we're trying to introduce the idea of vibrato. What's the optimal way to do that? When should that happen? What kinds of exercises are useful to develop?
The vibrato on the saxophone, to sound like it's going above, below that line,
Right.
to sound like that, it has to start in the middle of the pitch, or that equals.
Right.
Go above and back to the middle, never going below.
Uh-huh.
That sounds like above, below.
Uh-huh.
We start from the middle of the pitch, so the students have to learn how to play in the middle of the pitch, not at the top of the pitch, so they don't bite very hard here.
Sure.
Once again, it's getting out of their own way and allowing the overtones and the richness of the instrument to take place in the middle of a pitch as opposed to top of the pitch.
Yeah.
Now, I was first taught to play vibrato as violinists, as some violinists do, from the top down. But when I went to Joe Allard, that was changed. From the middle up, back to the middle. And that's what we do with vibrato. We started very slowly. First of all, we play, I have the students play a pitch. Usually they play it here. Then we spend some time learning to play it in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
Then from there, like a sick lawnmower, it should sound. Very gradually, we speed that up. There's the vibrato.
Yeah.
Vibrato right now in our repertoire is becoming, in my view, less and less used. But to me, when you play certain styles, vibrato must be a part of those styles. I insist upon it because these pieces were written, a lot of the French repertoire. We have 23,000 pieces for the saxophone now. If only 4 to 6% of those, or 2 to 4% of those pieces are any good, we have 400, 500, 600 pieces. We have a great deal of repertoire. A lot of the best known repertoire is from what we call the French school of playing. It's Ebert, it's Debussy. That requires vibrato. That's the style. That's it. End of story. Now, beyond that, and all the contemporary repertoire we have, that's choice. And once again, it's style. When we play Baroque music, well, what kind of Baroque performance style, practice do you want to use? Do you want to use the one that says don't use any vibrato? You want to use the one that says vibrato changes according to ornamentation even. It depends where you want to go, but it must be thought out or played with some intellectual knowledge as well as heart.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a whole thing, vibrato. I pretty much just know what I want to sound like. But generally, I did. That example I used before, see, if you play that Ebert Concerto da Camera, and you don't, a lot of players make the following error. The piece is fast, or technically fast, although I try to make it sound really easy. It's not fast. So they do the vibrato fast, but that's not it. Between 3 and 4, there it is, because that's the pulse. Now, a lot of players play like this. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So they lose that nice evenness. So. It's a part of the melody. This. Same thing, see, it's a measure of vibrato, it's even, it goes on, has line, it's in pursuit of the musical line. It's a part of the sound, it's within the sound, not without the sound, the amplitude isn't too wide.
Right.
And, well, there's a lot to that.